Hello, and welcome to the Joe Cortez Show here in Las Vegas, Nevada, the entertainment and boxing capital of the world. Well, first of all, I want to offer my condolences for those college students that were murdered over the weekend in two different locations around the country. This is uncalled for. I mean, these kids, as parents, you worry about your children wherever they go, your grandchildren. And I mean, these children, they're going to college to get a good education, and they face these unforeseen crimes that occurred. I mean, it's uncalled for. I hope that we could put a stop to that. And again, I offer my condolences to the families and loved ones. I also want to talk about a fighter that most recently had a tragic accident in the ring where he was hurt. He was knocked out in the 12th round. He had it with a fellow by the name, a Cuban fighter by the name of Correll. And the fighter by the name of Ades Yobisoni Nuli, a fighter from Europe, and he's from Kazakhstan to be exact. He's a fighter that was undefeated with 16 pro fights under his belt. He was taking a beating throughout the fight, and in the last round he ended up getting knocked out. And the corner was thinking about stopping the fight, but they want to give him a chance. The kid want to continue going. And being with a record undefeated, 16-0, you don't really want to stop a fight. But anyway, we all learn from that a fighter, I'd rather see the fighters go home to the family safe and sound and forget about his undefeated record. I'd rather stop at a punch too soon than a punch too late. 20 weeks did a good job, but what happened is uncontrollable. You can't control these things sometimes. But we wish him the very best. I understand from today's news that he's moving, he's talking, he's taken out of intensive care. So, that's pretty good. That's a good sign. So hopefully he gets back on his feet and go back home to his family. Anyway, one of the things that I've been asked a lot lately is about, Joe, how did you get started in boxing? A lot of people want to know. Well, you know what? I'm going to share a lot of that with you today because I say a lot because there is a lot to Joe Cortez's background. There's a Joe Cortez MMA out here in Las Vegas as well. Don't confuse him with me. Even though I've done some MMA stuff I remember when Conor McGregor called me, his people called me, that they wanted me to train him on the rules on boxing when he fought Floyd Mayweather. So I had him for 5 weeks under my jurisdiction. I had him under my guidance, let's put it that way. I was coaching him for 5 weeks and making sure that he did the right things in the fight when he fought Floyd Mayweather. I remember while he was sparring in the ring with Paulie Malignaggi, he committed a couple of fouls, and I had to stop him. I took 2 points from him from committing some fouls during the training session to show him that this is what will happen in the real fight. But don't confuse Joe Cortez MMA with Joe Cortez, the real Joe Cortez in boxing. One MMA, I respect that. Joe Cortez, make sure you respect that with boxing. Anyway, I had a guest scheduled for today, Jason Vincent, and he unfortunately is a little ill. But there's some boxing events coming up this weekend at Barry's Boxing Gym, and I'll try to check that out on the schedule, and I'll make sure that Jason Vincent puts that out there for you guys to watch the show this coming Saturday here in Las Vegas. Amateur tournaments that are so important in boxing, because that's how you get started in boxing. And that's how I got started in boxing. Back in the days with the Police Athletic League, they asked me to join the amateur ranks to become an amateur referee. But prior to that, I was a Golden Glove fighter. I turned amateur fighting. I went to amateur fighting when I was 15 years of age. I started in the boys club. Then when I was 16, I went into the sub-novice division in Madison Square Garden. I reached the finals, beating Tony Salgado. I'll take it back, Pablo Acevedo for my first Golden Glove championship. And I won that, and I won the Spanish Golden Glove championship that year. Then the following year, I won the Open sub-novice, the Open Golden Glove championship. And then I won the Open Spanish Golden Glove championship. Then I won the Eastern Golden Glove championship in Madison Square Garden. And that night I was lucky for the Eastern Golden Glove championship because I'm the only fighter people can remember that knocked out 2 guys the same night in Madison Square Garden. Then from there, we went up to Bear Mountain to train for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of training at Bear Mountain, getting us ready. My brother Mike and I both went to New York, the Easterns together. He was a lightweight champion. I was a bantamweight champion. Then from there, they flew us to Chicago to fight for the Nationals. That was in 1961. I was 17 years of age, and I won my National Golden Glove Championship along with my brother Mike. And I beat a fighter by the name of Oscar German. Now, Oscar German is a fighter that had beaten Manuel Stewart, the famous trainer. Oscar German beat him, and one day, Manny Stewart told me, "Joe, are you that skinny Puerto Rican from New York that beat Oscar German for the Nationals in Chicago Stadium in '61?" I said, "Yeah, that was me." He said, "That's the guy that beat me in that tournament." Anyway, so I got to beat the guy who beat the man, Manuel Stewart. Manuel Stewart, greatly missed, great trainer, great person. May he rest in peace. Anyway, so that was the beginning of my career in boxing. Then I turned pro when I was 18, and I had an 18-1 record as a professional. But going back a little bit to how I first got introduced to boxing as a fighter, there was a fighter by the name of Gaspar Indian Ortega. Gaspar Indian Ortega, who moved to 99th Street Park in Madison in Manhattan, New York City. Well, born and raised. He lived right next door. He moved in next door with his brother Felix. And that's how we first met. And Gaspar is the one that introduced my brother Mike to boxing and myself. Mike got started into boxing first. I went into it a couple of years later. I decided to go into boxing, but my brother was there before me, and we both made it together. And Mike is not into boxing. He got into his religion, and he's doing his thing with his religion. He's happy. I'm happy for him. And I kept on with my boxing career. If you guys can see, I'm still very much alive, still kicking. I still got a little spark of the old flash. I still want to continue with my boxing career and do some commentating from a referee's perspective. I see a lot of things different than you fans out there do, because I've been in the ring as a fighter and as a referee, and I've been in the amateurs and the professionals. And doing the professionals has been an honor for me, because I've been able to referee some of the great fighters of all times, especially the fighters in the golden era of the 70s, when you had Roberto Duran, you had Sugar Ray Leonard, you had Marvin Hagler, you had Tommy Hearns, you had Mike Tyson, you had all these fighters that were coming up. They were good fighters. Ken Norton, you had so many of the good ones, and I had the honor of refereeing Roberto Duran on 4 occasions, and I had Oscar De La Hoya about 6 times, Julio Cesar Chavez 6 times, Manny Pacquiao about 4 times, and so on. And I could go on a list of over 990 some odd professional fights, close to 1,000 fights. BoxRec got me doing 996, but they only got me turning pro in 79, but I actually turned pro in 77. So there's 2 years of missing of my fights that I did in New York and in New Jersey, my first 2 years. So I go over 1,000 professional fights with 176 world championship fights according to BoxRec. They have me as 176 world title fights. Now, I don't count the international title fights. I don't count the IBC, the WB, NBA, a bunch of other title fights that I referee, title fight, but they were minor. I don't even count those. I'm counting the major ones from WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO. Those are the ones that I count. I got to travel around the world on many occasions, and I was able to learn about the different cultures in life, living in different parts of the world while refereeing. So it was an honor, and I think that you guys out there that think you know what you have at home, you don't know what you have here at home until you travel abroad. You go to a foreign country, then you say, well, I can't wait to get back home. When you get back home, you know the difference. It's a great experience in traveling. I love Australia. I love Italy. Those are 2 of my favorite countries to visit. But there's no place like home. You really get to love America. I joined the Army when I was 18. I was able to fight some pro fights while I was in the Army, but I was also able to defend and fight for my country. I didn't go to the Vietnam era. That came right after I joined in '63, and right after that, the Vietnam era came about. I didn't get to go to Vietnam, but I was coaching on a boxing team down in Fort Hood, Texas. It was a lot of fun. I did my basic training up in Fort Dix, and I had a lot of fun. Couldn't fight in the Army because I was already professional. Even though I was so young, they thought I was an amateur kid coming into the boxing team. I said, no, I'm already professional. But they kept me on as a coach. I was very happy with that. But then when I was, after I finished my boxing career as a fighter, when I turned pro, I felt there was not an opportunity for me to continue boxing, even though I was 18-1. I felt there was nothing there for me. I had gotten married, and I had 2 girls at the time. And I decided back in 1969, after I retired from boxing, to move to Puerto Rico. And that's where I started working at the El San Juan Hotel Corporation, the sister hotel, the El Conquistador Hotel, where I worked my way up from front desk clerk to executive manager of the hotel. I was there for 8 years. And then Bob Guccione from Penthouse Magazine and I became good friends, and he offered me a job to work with him in New York City. I told him, Bob, I went up to New York. We met with him, and I was with him a whole day in New York. We had a great time at his apartment, that he had a nice house, that he one of those brownstone homes that he had bought from Judy Garland. And he said, Joe, this is the living room where Judy Garland used to play her piano. Piano was still there. He kept the room intact the way it was. It was a good experience. But when I got back to Puerto Rico, I went to talk to Lou Piro, who was the owner of the El San Juan Corporation. And I told him, Mr. Piro, I went up to New York to meet with your friend, and I was thinking of working up there with him, and I'll probably put in my resignation soon. He said, Joe, I can use you at my New York office. I said, doing what? He said, I'll find a position for you. I said, no, I got to know, what are you going to give me there? He said, well, I can make you casino operations manager. You run the casino operations from my New York office. And we got casino managers in Puerto Rico, 3 casinos, the El San Juan, the Palace, and the El Conquistador hotels. And he said, we'll keep you there. At the New York office, you oversee the action reports, the credit lines, and the collections. All that comes out of my New York office operation, and you'll end up doing that. I said, okay. So I took that job. I said, by the way, when do I start? He said, Joe, you tell me when, and you got the job. And I ended up going to New York and started working with the El San Juan Corporation, and it was a lot of fun. Did 7 more years of that. And before you know it, that's when I started refereeing here in New York. But it all started at the El Conquistador Hotel in Puerto Rico with a gentleman by the name of Pat Masher. Pat Masher, who was a policeman, then a detective in New York City back in the 60s, he says, Joe, I used to referee. I'm a guest here at the hotel. I'm here. He saw a brochure with my name. He said, I'm a guest at the hotel here. He says, where are you? I said, I'll be right down. So I came from my office, saw Pat Masher and his beautiful wife, Rosemary, and we had a little chat. And he stayed the whole week. And then when I was ready to go back to New York, about a year later, I gave him a call. I said, Pat, I'm back here in New York. I did 8 years in Puerto Rico, and now I'm working for the New York office, the El San Juan Corporation, same company. So he said, so what are you doing now? He said, what are you doing with boxing? I said, I'm not doing anything. He said, Joe, will you consider being an amateur referee? I said, referee? Why not? I'll take a shot. So I started with the Police Athletic League. There was a gentleman by the name of Johnny Defoe. Johnny Defoe was a head trainer for the Police Athletic League in New York City, and he said, hey, Joe, come on down. I want you to work with the amateur kids, 10, 12-year-old kids. They're boxing. Come on down, bring some sneakers and white slacks, and I'll give you a T-shirt, Police Athletic League. And I started refereeing these young kids. A couple of months later, he said, Joe, the Golden Gloves is right around the corner, and I want to get you started with the Golden Gloves and see what happens there. I said, okay. So I applied for the Golden Gloves, and they gave me my license, and I started doing some amateur bouts. I remember one night in Brooklyn, New York, that was back in 1977. There was a big snowstorm. When I got to the club there in Brooklyn, New York, there was no other referee showed up that night. But all the fighters were there, because they get there by train or bus or whatever. But most of the referees, nobody showed up. I was the only one. They had the judges showed up, about 4 or 5 judges showed up. They used those judges. So you know who got stuck doing 27 fights that night. I did them all. They were all novices, so they were like quick knockouts, 1 round, 2 round knockouts. So I really didn't work all the rounds. There were 3-round fights, and some of them were 2 minutes because they're novice division. So anyway, I got to do 27 fights that night, and next thing you know, the quarterfinals right around the corner, and Pat Masher said, Joe, I don't think you're going to work anything in the quarterfinals, semifinals, or finals, because the first year, they want to try you out. So you did enough fights at the beginning of the tournament, but you will not be working the quarterfinals. One day I got a note in the mail, a little white card that says that I'm working the quarterfinals. I called Pat, hey, Pat, hey, listen, I got a call They want me to work the quarterfinals. He said, Joe, you got to be kidding. Nobody works the quarterfinals the first year. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I never have seen any referee work quarterfinals the first time in. He said, I never did it. Anyway, so I did the quarterfinals. He said, Joe, I saw that you did pretty good. I got good reports and you did real good. And then he said, we'll see you next year then. Let's see what happens. I got another notice in the mail. I'm doing 2 semifinal fights in the Golden Gloves. I said, Pat, I'm doing 2 semifinals. He said, Joe, no way in the world. There's no way in the world you can do semifinals. I said, well, they got me doing 2 of them. He said, well, good luck, Joe. We'll see what happens. I did the semifinal fights. Next thing you know, I'm getting all kinds of great reviews from other officials. And Pat Masher said, yo, I was there and I saw you did a good job, you know. Next thing you know, he said, we'll see you next year. I got another notice in the mail. Joe, you're doing 2 championship fights in Madison Square Garden. Now, mind you, I'm only doing this 6 months as a referee. I never been in the ring as a referee. But I had ring mechanic moving around because I used to be a good boxer moving around. So I used my ring mechanic. That helped me a lot with the amateurs. So I got to do 2 championship fights in Madison Square Garden. And one of the fighters happened to be Juan Laporte, who happened to be one of the great featherweight champions. He fought Alex Arguello. He fought Julio Cesar Chavez, a great fighter. Anyways, I got to do those 2 fights, 2 championship fights. And I got a call a week later from the New York State Athletic Commission, a gentleman by the name of Frank Morris, Deputy Commissioner. He said, Joe, this is Frank Morris, New York State Athletic Commissioner. Yeah, I remember you, Mr. Morris. He said, come on, I want to talk to you about something. So I wondered what the hell he wanted to talk to me about. Did I do something wrong? What's wrong? So he called me up. I go up to the New York State Athletic Commission office, downtown New York. He said, Joe, I was at the fights 2 weeks ago, and I was watching you refereeing. And you know what, Joe? He said, you have the talent to be a professional referee. I said, Mr. Morris, I've only been doing this for 6 months. He said, Joe, I know, but I want to turn you pro now. I said, but how am I going to get work? I mean, how am I going to get it? I'm not ready for it. He said, yes, we'll give you 4-round fights, 6-round fights. Every show we're on, you're going to be on every show. I promise you that. And this way, you get enough work and work your way through it and see where you go from there. Well, little did you know that about 1.5 years later, I got a call to do my first main event on National Wide World of Sports TV, do my first main event on television, 1.5 years after I turned pro. And that was the beginning of my career. Then I remember he called me up and said, Joe, you're doing good, and we like the way you're working. And next thing you know, one day I went to see a boxing show in New Jersey, and I saw Jersey Joe Walker, who was a commissioner in New Jersey at the time, and Bob Lee was the deputy commissioner. So he told me, Joe, I met him. He says, Joe, you're a referee from New York. I've been watching in New York your work. I said, yes. So he said, I want you to come down to will you be interested in becoming a professional? I said, yes. He said, I want you to come down to my office. Go down there next week. I'll tell Bob Lee you're coming down and have you apply for a license in New Jersey. I went down to the New Jersey State Athletic Commission, and Bob Lee, I met him, and he gave me, I filled out all the paperwork. A week later, I got my license in the mail. I'm a professional referee in New Jersey as well. Now I'm refereeing New York and New Jersey. And that's when I met the great Larry Hazard, a commissioner. He's a commissioner in New Jersey right now. Anyway, so him and I started working together, and we started creating different scenarios to try to implement some rules on boxing. Because back in the days, the referee, whatever the referee did was acceptable by everybody. Everybody will accept any call the referee will make. But Larry Hazard and I said, no, that's not right. They're not giving the warnings. They're not making the point deduction. The ring mechanics were terrible. So we started implementing these different scenarios so we can make different, a set of rules for referees. So Larry Hazard, myself, and then we got Dr. Mike Xavier, who was a ringside doctor in Atlantic City, and we asked him to join us to start giving seminars. So we started giving our first seminar in New Jersey in 1979. Our first seminar ever given by officials. No referees or judges had any kind of a seminar. Larry Hazard and I and Dr. Xavier created that, and we made it happen. And today, we have seminars all over the country now. The ABC, they have the unification rules around the country, so I'm making sure that every state kind of complies with the rules, World Boxing Championship fights. They follow these ABC rules and whatnot. And so we like what we did back then because we kind of revolutionized refereeing with our techniques back in those days. So I got to referee some of the great ones, and I tell you, I had some great experiences refereeing these fights. And I talked to these young referees that I see today. I did some work with ESPN after I retired from boxing. I did 5 years with them. I did some time with Showtime. I did some HBO stuff, and all the networks around the country just talking about boxing. So from a referee's perspective, I call the shots the way I see them. I mean, I see things that other folks don't really know about what's going on, what goes on behind the scenes as a referee. How do you prepare for a fight? How do you train for particular fighters that are fighting that night? You know, so a lot of fans don't know that we have to give fighters the pre-fight instructions in the dressing room prior to the fight. But what we do before we get to the venue, we do our homework. Once we know if we're doing a championship fight, we know who we're refereeing. We like to do our homework and follow our fighter's record. And now that we have the luxury of watching the instant replay on the YouTube channel, you can see the reviews. You can see these fighters, some of the fights that are recorded. You see the fighters, they may have a tendency of going low a lot. Maybe they're using their head, excessive holding, spitting out the mouthpiece intentionally. All these little things that we pick up on that particular fighter. So when we're in the dressing room, giving the instruction, we know exactly how we're gonna target those tendencies that he has of committing these fouls. So we make sure that they give us a clean fight. I tell the referees out there when we give seminars, take control of the fighters back in the dressing room, makes your job easier in the ring. So it has helped a lot of referees around the world to become better referees. That's why today you see referees are making better decisions and when to give warnings, light warnings, strong warnings, point deduction, disqualification if you have to. I think I've disqualified 3 fighters in my whole career. Very little, but sometimes you have to do what you got to do when they don't follow the instructions. Sometimes some fighters are looking for a way out, so they'll commit intentional low blows or intentional headbutts. They'll do something to commit some kind of flagrant foul. That's when you got to take 2 points. I remember even Mike Tyson's last fight, I had to take 2 points from him. I refereed Tyson 8 times when he was coming up the ranks up until I did it with Larry Holmes, I did it with Marvis Frazier, I did it with the last one with Kevin McBride in Washington, D.C. I told Mike, listen, Mike, I want a clean fight. I obey my commands at all times. And I tell fighters, I don't care how tough they are, I tell them, I'm here to protect you. You understand? I told Mike Tyson, I'm here to protect you. If you or your opponent are taking unnecessary punishment, I'm going to stop the fight. You understand that? You commit any fouls, I'm going to take points. Any headbutts, any hitting your opponent while he's down, excessive holding, I will take points. Well, in his last fight, I had to take 2 points for he intentionally headbutt Kevin McBride, cut him. I grabbed Mike I called time, I grabbed him by the wrist, I took him to all 3 judges, I said 2 points, intentional headbutt, 2 points, 2 points, intentional headbutt. Anyway, that was Mike Tyson's last fight, and in that same round, at the end of the round, Mike was so exhausted, he didn't have anything left, I had to stop the fight. And his corner, Jeff Fennick, he looked at me, and I knew that what was in his mind, they were to stop the fight. I waved it off. Everybody, agreed with my call. But that's how you got to take control as a referee. Make your calls right. Don't be afraid to deduct points, or don't be afraid to stop a fight just because the fighter is a local fighter. You're in his hometown, or he's a local favorite, he's a champion. You got to look at fighter A, fighter B. There's no champion in the ring. When they take off that belt, they turn that belt over to the commission table, that means nobody's a champion. So you got to call it the way you see it. But some judges are afraid to score close rounds to the challenger instead of to the champion. I say, or referee, you're afraid of stopping it. If you're afraid of stopping a fight because you're at hometown and you feel like the fans are going to get on your case or whatever, then you should be referee. You got to have thick skin in this business to be a referee. And I tell you guys out there, continue doing what you're doing. Keep learning, keep going to these seminars. You got great referees out there doing a great job. Watch these referees, see what they're doing, see how they practice their ring mechanics, and you see how they're making their calls. Sometimes they'll make a little mistake here or there. Everybody makes mistakes. I made them. We all made mistakes, but you know what? We minimize our mistakes to make sure that we come back another day with better performance. And I tell you that I've been very, very happy to see the the ring mechanics, the professionalism of most of the referees out there today. I mean, I stay in touch with most of the commissioners out there, with most of these fighters, and I talk with them. I'm always giving them advice, like I'm doing on the show today. I want to give advice to you guys so that you guys, if you're a referee or if you're a fan, you learn a little bit about what we do as referees, you know, to keep the boxing game alive and keep it going forward. And I can tell you that Russell Mora, one of our top referees in Las Vegas, most recently, he just finished doing the Canelo Alvarez and Triple G fight a couple of months or 2 months ago. He announced his retirement from boxing as a referee last week. He put in a good 30 years, 35 years as a referee. He put in his time, and he made it to the top, you know. He figures, I want to go out while I'm still on top. He likes to play golf now. He's playing golf every day, just about every day. And we love him. He's a good man. And we got Kenny Bailey, we got Tony Weed, we got Russell Mora, you got Jay Nady, who's doing the review official. He calls the instant replay. If there's a foul that's committed in the ring and the referee missed it, or there's a slip and the referee thought it was a punch, the referee, Jay Nady, he's a review official. He'll put up a yellow light on the ring apron to notify the referee that there's going to be a review. The referee calls time. They go to the review. They go to the monitor. They do the review, and if a change has to be made, the referee called it a knockdown. No, it was a slip. They make the change, and the fight in the ring, they take no offense to the review official making a change, but that's the way it is. They do it in other sports. You're only human. You can only call what you see. So sometimes, but you don't see some points that are committed, some fouls, or intentional, or headbutt. A headbutt, the referee thought it was a punch. It came from an accidental headbutt. You know, you don't want to go to the scorecard and give it to the fighter who's uncut because it was the referee said it was a legal punch. Then you go to the review, he said, no, it was accidental, so then you don't go to the scorecard. So we want to make sure that the right fighter wins the fight. We make sure that we keep boxing very much alive and keep it going forward. MMA is out there doing their thing, and we're very proud to see that here in Nevada, the Nevada State Athletic Commission, Jeff Mullins, who's the executive director, who's doing a good job with the commission, and they are doing their thing to making sure that MMA and boxing are kept up to par so that we can have clean sports and the fighters can come back and come back another day without taking unnecessary punishment. So the training for the judges and referees is so important. And you guys that are out there that want to get a start in the amateurs, you can start going to your local gyms and find out where the amateur boxing is taking place, PAL, or just sparring session. You can get in the ring and move around with these fighters in the ring. So this way, when you get yourself ready for the amateurs or for the professional ranks. Sometimes in the professional level, there's not enough fights out there. Sometimes there may be 2 or 3 shows a year in your state. Maybe, let's say, in Nebraska or in Idaho, there's not that much boxing. So, but there's maybe once or twice a year to have a professional show. Your license there, they're going to use you. You want to make sure you don't have no ring rust. You have no ring rust. What you do, go to your local gym. While the fighters are sparring, you're in there with them, moving around. Try to get that ring rust out of you. This way you're in there prepared for the fights when they take place on national television or whatever. You don't want to embarrass yourself. People say, hey, what the hell wrong with our referee? Well, there's nothing wrong with the referee. Just there's no boxing there, and nobody there to coach him and train him. So that's why we have seminars. If you referees out there, if you don't have boxing in your restriction, then get out and go to seminars, the ABC seminars. Go online and look at the abc.com, and you can see when the next seminars are taking place. And check with the main boxing cities like Atlantic City, New York, California, Chicago, Las Vegas. Find out when the boxing schedules are taking place and watch these fights and watch as many fights as you can on TV. Because by watching them, it makes you feel like you're part of it. You're still in the mix, but you're practicing your ring mechanics. You're watching, see what these guys are doing, making sure that if they make a mistake, you learn from their mistakes and makes you a better official. With that said, guys, I want to take it easy for the rest of the day now that I did all this talking, but I want to make sure that you guys protect yourselves at all times, keep your guards up at all times, and remember, guys, I'm fair, but I'm firm. Take care. We catch you next week. God bless. Bye-bye.